The Cubs' bats explode against Detroit, powering them to a series victory at home. Now they head to Miami to take on the lowly Marlins. Is a run on the way? We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about Pete Crow-Armstrong, who the Cubs acquired when they traded away Javier Baez. Have the Cubs won that deal? That and more on this edition of the Cubs Baseball Channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Get in that comment section. Let us know how you felt about Javi making his return to Wrigley Field. But for now, here's your invitation to our show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs Baseball Channel. My name is Anthony Pasquale. He's Mick Gillespie. You can find him on Twitter at Broadcaster Mick, and you can find me at Ant_Pasquale3. Mick, we talked about it. What the Cubs need to do is continue to win series. They did just that against Detroit.
Yeah, I think they need the sweep, but look, I'm not going to say that winning 2 out of 3 isn't a bad thing. I mean, they're staying close enough where if they could have this run we've been waiting on all year, they have a chance to do something and maybe, I mean, the mountain just keeps getting higher. But with that said, taking some series, hanging in there, maybe something good will happen. I'm still not sure that nothing short of one of those like Oakland A's winning streaks, from Moneyball, where they went like 14 straight, but winning so much better than losing.
Yeah, I was going to say, definitely not putting all your chips in quite yet, but you definitely do have to enjoy flying the W instead of the L flag up there. The offense was great yesterday, kind of exploding. 10 runs were scored against the Tigers, and it was Miguel Amaya who led the way. He had a grand slam in the bottom of the second inning to start the scoring. Also had an RBI hit later on in the ball game. He had 3 hits. He was 3 for 4 with 5 runs driven in. Really strong effort from Amaya, who's been really good as of late. The batting average is starting to climb a little bit. He's starting to put the ball in play more, which is all you can ask for from that catching position. Finally getting some production there and getting to turn that lineup over has been huge for the Cubs.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get production on a good team out of the bottom of the lineup. And when the Cubs struggle, they don't get much production from the bottom of the lineup. And, and their star players in certain games, it seems like 1 out of every 5 games they can't score. But if you start getting guys at the bottom of the lineup get on base, he get home runs, great teams do that. Good things happen. And Amaya, I feel like with Amaya, I don't know what his future is. I don't think he has anything locked down. It's really important for him to take advantage of the end of this season to prove that he can play. And honestly, he's actually been pretty good lately. And he had one of the biggest hits in the game.
Yeah, the adjustments he made a few weeks ago before, he got benched for a few games, he kind of eliminated that leg kick. He's been a lot better since then, and that's been something that's been really good to see. Aside from that, Dansby, Swanson, Nico Hoerner, and Cody Bellinger all tallied 2 hits in the ball game. Pete Crow-Armstrong drove in a pair of runs, and then Swanson, Hoerner, and Bellinger drove in the rest for a 10-2 win. But the big story of the game, in my opinion, Justin Steele. He was terrific on the mound once again. 7 innings, only allowed 4 hits. One of them was a 2-run homer. But other than that, he was pretty much perfect. 10 strikeouts. His season ERA is down to 3.07. He finally got a win. That's his 4th of the year. Steele was everything you need your ace to be.
Well, this is a guy the Cubs can build around. I mean, and we were talking about this before, and it was like, hey, would they trade him? And, somebody asked at the press conference, right before the trade deadline. And I'm like, man, I just never saw it as a possibility. I mean, I know that was something they talked about, but he is getting better and better. And he's the kind of pitcher that doesn't have to throw as hard as he can to get outs. And he doesn't have to spin it as hard as he can to get outs. I think he's built for a long career. He's had some bad luck, but you know what? The last couple seasons, he's just really reminded me of John Lester, maybe John Lester light, but, of course he got help from John Lester, worked with him on making adjustments and, how he could, get outs the way that Lester did. And I've been really impressed with what he brings to the table. And I think he's just such an important part of this organization moving forward. And, another great example of that. And we wondered, like, after his, last start got rained out, what that was going to be like. And all the guy did was just come back fresh and ready to go.
And obviously, a big highlight of the Tiger series was having Javier Baez back in town. But I think what a lot of people are forgetting is that the product of that trade is on the field for the Cubs on an everyday basis at this point. Of course, there was Javier Baez and Trevor Williams sent to the Mets at the 2021 trade deadline. The Cubs got back Pete Crow-Armstrong in return, who had 2 RBI yesterday and has been playing a lot better as of late. Is it fair to say already that the Cubs won that trade?
This is really personal to me because I love both of these guys. And as a matter of fact, on my broadcast yesterday, my broadcast partner was like, we're talking about Hollywood Pete, and he was like, you love both of these guys. And I'm like, I really do. I mean, I remember when Javi Baez got to the Cubs and people were really curious, like wondering like who he was. Like what was the guy's got the MLB tattoo on his neck, and he's kind of flamboyant out on the field, and all I saw off the field was a great family man and a good person and a guy that cared about his family and his teammates. And we were in Jacksonville, and that's where he's from, and there were like 150 people waiting outside of the locker room for him. I'd never seen anything like it before. It was like every single person that he knew wanted to be there, including his late sister, who had spina bifida. And boy, he loved her so much. And it just being around him and his family, his uncle was somebody that we would see a lot. I realized that this guy was a special guy, and then what he could do on the baseball field and the passion that he played with, and intelligence too, man, really fast intelligence. So then, he gets traded for Pete Crow-Armstrong. Pete's dad was a huge Cubs fan. He's from Illinois. Grandmother loved Javi Baez. He talked about that in an interview he did. And he said that it was one of the inspirations of him playing the game. I mean, not knowing he was ever going to be drafted for Javi Baez. And then you watch the way that he plays the game, that speed, the passion, the electricity. And I think that's why I was drawn to both of these guys, because of that. That personality that they play with. I always liked the swagger that Javi Baez had. I hate seeing Javi not a good player. I hate it. But I think when I look at Pete Crow-Armstrong, I see someone that's got so much potential. And you remember last year on the channel, I talked about it all the time, and people were giving me hell. Hey, man, you're wrong. This guy, you guys are seeing it now. It takes a long time to adjust for some players, but slowly but surely, he makes a contribution to the team a lot. Next year he's going to have to get on base more. He's going to have to hit a little bit more, but he's an exciting player. And I love like the respect that Pete has for Javi. It's just two really special players, but the Cubs absolutely won the trade. Absolutely won it. The Mets, so the first thing was that the Mets didn't do anything. They got Javi, it didn't work well. You remember he was kind of in the center of controversy over there. Then he signs with the Tigers, and I've heard from people internally that he's not happy in Detroit. It shows in his game, but I don't know if he's. I mean, is he really capable of turning it off and turning it back on anymore? I don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Pete Crow-Armstrong is a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. He'll win a Gold Glove if he plays center field every day. He's got power. He's got speed. I know he can hit for an average. I think that he's always been the youngest guy on the field. This will be the first time where he's been in the same league for 2 years in a row. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
And I also think he's going to work hard. I really believe in him and the fact that he's going to go out there and bust his hump to try to get better and better, because these two guys, when I saw Javi as a Cub and now I see Pete Crow-Armstrong or Hollywood Pete as a Cub, they care more about winning than the personal stuff. And you got to have those kind of guys.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think it's kind of hard to grade these trades just because when you look at your Bryants and your Baez's and your Rizzos, they meant so much to the team that no matter what you were getting back, it kind of stung to get rid of those guys. Like that was something that was always going to hurt. But then you look at the way those career trajectories have kind of changed since leaving the Cubs, and it seems like the Cubs definitely made the right decision to move on from those players, especially at the times that they did move on from those players. And the thing that for PCA and Javi that kind of stinks now is that they're always going to be compared to each other moving forward. And right now, the value is obviously swung heavy into the Cubs side. I think Pete has a WAR over 1, and Baez has a WAR of minus 1.3, I think, on the season. So the value obviously swings heavily in the Cubs' favor. But that's not to diminish all of the awesome things that Baez accomplished in Chicago. It's just here and moving forward, Pete Crow-Armstrong is going to be the better player. And part of that is because he's got a lot of Javi in him. And I think that's a good point that you made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now the Cubs, with the win yesterday, moved to 2 games below 500.
Here we are again.
I know. They're about to play a team that they might have a chance to sweep. And that's what we said. You got to win the series you're supposed to win, steal a sweep or two, and you're going to have a chance. You're going to be in the mid 80s if you do that. And mid 80s should give you a shot. And they're 2 games under right now. They're in third place, 10.5 back because the Brewers lost yesterday, 5.5 back in the wild card. But like we said, the easiest schedule in the National League remaining, and they take on the Marlins for 3 games in Miami tonight. Now, a lot of the teams in the NL wild card are hovering around where the Cubs are, 2, 3, 4 games below, 1 game over, 2 games over. Not the Marlins. The Marlins are like 42 and 81. They are out of it. They are a team that is competing for next year. So you're going to get, some guys trying to play spoiler, but for the most part, this just isn't a great baseball team. So the Cubs need to go down to Miami and take care of business. Obviously, sweeping a team on the road is a difficult thing to do, but if there's a team you're going to be able to do it against, you have to hope it's the Marlins. And the Cubs are going to have Hendricks, Imanaga, and Assad going in the series. The Marlins have only announced their starter for tonight's game. It's Max Meyer, who's 3-3 with a 5.58 ERA. But the fact of the matter is, Mick, this just isn't a great baseball team. 46 and 81 on the year. Cubs have to take care of business.
Yeah, I mean, we've been waiting on a sweep. I mean, but the Marlins always seem to give the Cubs problems. It's like a AAA roster. Their manager's probably not coming back next year. He'll be one of the most sought-after skippers that's available on the market. This is a franchise in transition, and they traded a lot of their best players, anybody that they could trade away at the deadline. So the Cubs got to go in there with a killer instinct and take care of business.
Yeah, and the Cubs have Kyle Hendricks on the mound, who, as of late, has been a lot better. His last 2 starts, 11 innings, 3 earned runs. So if you get something in the neighborhood of 1 or 2 earned runs tomorrow across 5 or 6 innings, you have to be happy with that. The only problem is the last 2 times Hendricks has pitched, the Cubs have given him absolutely no run support. I think one of them was a 2-1 loss and one was a 3-0. So you're going to need a little bit more than that. And against a guy with a 5.58 ERA, you'd have to hope that the Cubs bats come alive. I'm looking at 2 guys to really break out of their funks right now, Isaac Paredes and Nico Hoerner. They've both been scuffling, not hitting the ball hard. I know they're both contact guys, but they're not driving the ball. I'd like to see that change in Miami.
Yeah, look, Paredes is dealing with the fact that people care about the team he plays on. Yeah, I mean, and this is something that I noticed too. Like, some of those guys that have success in Oakland or Tampa Bay or Miami, they go to other places in big markets and they don't perform the same way because there's just a lot more pressure and scrutiny. Yeah, the other thing, maybe he's putting a little bit too much pressure on himself after the trade to go out and perform. This was a job that when he was coming up as a minor leaguer that he hoped he'd get. And then, obviously he gets traded a couple times and now he's back again, but he wants to do a good job and hit. And we know he can. And he's just got to go out there and do it. It's a tough adjustment. He's an all-star player. Mm-hmm. He's just got to play like an all-star player, but team's better with him. They're better with him. They're better without Morel. And I think long-term he's going to be okay. And the same thing with Nico. The interesting part, though, of this whole situation is, what are the Cubs going to look like next year? I mean, they've got all these guys in AAA. I've talked about it a million times, but there's some guys, the Patrick Wisdoms, those kind of guys aren't going to have a job next year. I mean, they're just not. I mean, they're going to be like the minor leaguers. But, you know, if you scuffle and you're Dansby Swanson, or you scuffle and you're Nico Hoerner, is Craig Counsell going to bench you and put the young guy in? Or is he going to, you know, stick with it and have a season like this? You know, and I think when you have competition, I've said this a million times, it is better for the entire team. One of the reasons that Tony La Russa, and I met Tony La Russa and talked to him about this a few weeks ago, and I know he's a Sox guy, and he told me he's a Sox guy. I mean, we talked about that too, but
right.
what made him a great manager in Oakland and then made him a great manager in St. Louis is that he would play the best player. You know, it wasn't always about the dollar. It was about the winning, you know, and you get these big contracts and all this stuff, you know, the established guy, you got to play the player that's going to help you win. And if you can get a team to do that, you get an organization to do that, no matter what their title is, no matter how much money they're making, you're going to be a better team. And we know from, you know, sitting around with Jason Hayward for all those years where he didn't do anything. And Dansby Swanson kind of feels a lot like that to me right now. You know, maybe putting a Matt Shaw, maybe a James Triantos, you know, maybe an Owen Casey, who I think is going to be in right field. Putting them in and taking these other guys out, you know what? It's a young man's game. I mean, look at the Padres right now with Jackson Merrill.
Yeah.
You know, he's turned the whole thing around. They may win the World Series this year. Don't be surprised. You hear first. That's all it takes.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point. Next season, oh, by the way, Jason Hayward was DFA'd by the Dodgers yesterday. Not sure if you saw that. So he's a free agent right now. But you bring up a good point. Like once we get to next year, and this is assuming that they don't trade somebody over the offseason, because they might, to make room for some of these guys that have to come up. But how short is the leash on a guy like Hoerner? Like if he struggles out of the gate and you've got Matt Shaw and James Triantos ready to come take his job, you know, that's something you have to think about. You got a lot of guys that can play second, got a lot of guys that can play third, but you got two guys at the major league level making money to play those positions too. So it's going to be something to watch out for. If Bellinger opts out, right field is going to be up for grabs, and I assume Casey takes it and Suzuki DHs would be my guess opening next year. But this could be a busy winter when it comes to trades. But you also mentioned Paredes and him hitting in stadiums typically with not a lot of fans. So maybe going to Miami is going to be good for him, huh?
Yeah, right. We'll see if he goes back home. And so back to Florida again and cleans up. Hey, I want to say something else too. I got really one of the cool things that happened. You know, we hit 1 million subscribers, and Travis Matthew is a brand of clothing, and they sent me some Cubs gear. How cool is that? Yeah, I mean, like just as a total surprise to me. But I really appreciate it. I just thought that was so cool, you know, like getting a care package of gear, you know, from those guys. So thank you so much, guys. I'll be wearing the, you know, I got this, which I wear these every day anyway, right? So it's like I got the blue one, I got the baby blue one, and I got the gray one. And like I put them all together, and I'm like, man, that's so me, you know. And then got a polo and a t-shirt, but it's the thought that counts. You know, so, you know, I'm just telling you guys, if you're looking for some really cool Cubs gear, they just put together this MLB line at Travis Matthew. It's great stuff. It feels great. And it put a smile on my face, man. And I've got a lot of stuff going on with work right now, baseball, college football, you know, and it's all hitting at once. And it's like, it's been stressful. And then I'm out like cleaning my boat, and I'm about to cut the grass. I'm doing all these chores, and the UPS guy shows up and he hands me this. I'm like, man, that's so cool. So thank you guys. Thank you. And go Cubs, man.
Yeah, absolutely. None of that wouldn't happen without all of you guys. And it sounds like you got your blue, your baby blue, and your gray. You got a home, a road, and an alternate. So
that's right. That's
sprinkle those in on the show. But guys, as always, thanks so much for chopping it up about the Cubs with us here on the Cubs Baseball channel. We appreciate all of you guys. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, and keep liking and subscribing and getting in those comment sections. I'm sure you guys will have a lot to say about next year's roster and who might be in and who might be out. But for now, the Cubs won a series, so let's celebrate that and start the next one on the right track in Miami. Go Cubs.